an announcement came over the ship saying there's going to be very strict quarantine when you get to Sydney, and we'll be checking for any illegal weapons and things, because people had guns and knives and, stuff that they war souvenirs, if you like. And they were going to bring them all back to Australia. Suddenly all these things started to get turfed over the side of the ship.
Welcome to the Members Lounge pod, where we talk to everyday people about their life experience and also what got them into golf. Today I'm joined by someone whose life spans military service, a long and strong career in real estate, and a 40-year connection to both the RSL and golfing community. Welcome, Peter Barnes.
Thanks, Gemma.
Let's start right at the beginning. So you grew up in Moonee Ponds in the 50s. What was life like back then?
Very different to what it is now. You were left to your own devices a little bit more. You'd just go out and play on the road out the front of the house. Kids don't do that anymore because there's probably too many cars on the road.
So you attended St Mary's Primary School and Niddrie Tech. What kind of student were you?
Ordinary. I think I might have started off as a very good student. I can remember that at one grade in St Mary's, because it was a Catholic school, I went from, and I honestly don't know whether it was grade 2 to grade 4 or grade 3 to grade 5, but I skipped one whole grade because they had too many kids. So they took what they thought were the best students out of one grade and pushed them up. And I always blamed that because I was always the youngest kid in the class. I've always been the youngest at this and that, so I think that's because I went up that one grade at St Mary's. And of course you had to put up with the nuns. They were pretty vicious at times.
Were they?
Well, they were very strict, but of course they don't have nuns now. And but they used to, walk around with their habits on and all the full regalia, and you don't forget that, I think.
Were you glad once school was over?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
What did you do once you finished school? What were the next steps for you?
Well, I left school early. I had a variety of jobs. I remember I was a telegram boy at the post office. I had a stint as in a factory as a cabinet maker, and Walton's in the city where I met my wife.
What's the day in the life look like for a telegram boy?
Gee, now you're stretching the memory. You'd have a bike and the telegrams would come in on the teleprinter, and you'd have to take them to the house, deliver them to the door, and then come back to the post office and probably sit down and wait for the next one. And I think there were one of the jobs was to go around to the payphones and collect all the threepences that people would put in the phones to make a call.
And what about Waltons? What was your role there?
I was in window dressing for a while. I worked at a shop in Puckle Street, Moonee Ponds, called Palmer's. It was a menswear shop, and in retail. And I met a guy there that used to come and do the windows, and they used to make all this stuff to put in the windows, and that seemed to interest me. So I think he left Palmer's and went to Walton's, and I think that's how I finished up in there. And Lynette was working in the haberdashery department, I think, and so that's where we met. And then when I got called up, Lynette left Walton's and went nursing, and I went into national service.
So you were 20 when you were called up.
Yeah, they had a cage and balls in the cage, and they drew them out 4 times a year for the intakes, and it was on your birthday. So if your birthday came up, you got called up, and if you didn't, you didn't. I think that was an unfair way of doing it, because both my brother and myself got called up, and then there would be other families where nobody got called up. So if you can think about the impact that had on my mother, was probably worse than it was on me or my brother, because being the youngest, my brother came home from Vietnam just as I went into the army. I think poor old mum thought, well, I've got one home, but now my baby's gone. She wasn't too happy about it.
When you called up, do you have a certain amount? Did you know when you're coming home, or is there a certain amount of time that you called up for?
We called up for 2 years. 1 year in Australia training and 1 year in Vietnam.
Does your birthday have a different meaning?
No.
Still celebrate your birthday?
Oh, of course, yeah.
Very good. And so, so you served as a trooper with the 3rd Cavalry Regiment in Vietnam. What was that experience like for a 20-year-old?
Well, it was an adventure. I think most young people, you don't think about it when you're that young. You think about it more when you get older. So it started off as an adventure. I was quite happy to go into the army, and I enjoyed the training and everything in Australia. Some people didn't, but I did. It's only when you get over there that you realise, hang on, this is for real, and then it hits you, a bit. And I think as things go on, you realise, the impact of it and how serious it is. But at the time, I didn't think about it.
And so your squadron was one of the last squadrons there. You fought in the last battles over in Vietnam. How did you know the war was over and that you were coming home?
Oh, that's a good question. Probably on the radio. The American forces had a whole radio station just dedicated to Vietnam. And the elections, were on, and Golf and Lance Barnard, I think, got in. He was the vice, or the second in charge, or whatever his status was. But they were running the country, just the two of them, before they elected their cabinet. And Gough, being Gough, typically decided to, that the two of them could act and make all these rules and act very quickly. And so he said, well, the war's over, we're bringing all the troops home. And that's not the easiest thing to do. So I think, I'm not sure when the election was or when it happened, but I think it was just prior to Christmas. And so it took, probably 6 months to get everybody out of there. And because I still had time to serve, I was in the last group to leave Nui Dat, and we went down to Vung Tau, which was, a seaside place, and then we loaded up the Sydney and took all of our equipment home, whereas the Americans just left it all there. They didn't care, they just abandoned it. But typical Australia, we had to clean all the APCs and all the guns and all the equipment and pack them on the ship and send them home.
What was boarding the HMAS like?
I can't remember.
Can you remember the boat arriving back in Australia?
Oh, yes. Yeah. It arrived in Sydney. I can remember an announcement coming over the radio on board the ship, because we did nothing on the ship. They fed us. We had made hammocks out of mail bags, because we were assigned to sleep downstairs and it was stinking hot. And So we just made hammocks and strung them up all around the ship. It was like a holiday, you know, and people would go and lie out on the deck of the aircraft carrier, lathered in, oil and try to get a suntan. So, you know, you wouldn't do that today, but that's what we did. That's how we passed the time. We didn't have to do any, phys ed or army stuff or whatever. They just left you to your own resources, right? But then an announcement came over the ship saying there's going to be very strict quarantine when you get to Sydney, and we'll be checking for any illegal weapons and things, because people had guns and knives and, you know, stuff that they war souvenirs, if you like. And they were going to bring them all back to Australia. And suddenly all these things started to get turfed over the side of the ship, because people were worried about not being able to get home, not being let out of the army. If they got caught with them, it'd hold things up, and everyone wanted to just get off the ship and go and see girlfriends or family or whatever. And so all this stuff got turfed over the side of the ship. And when we got to Sydney, there was no customs at all. They didn't check anything. They just said, "Go on your way." And I went, put all my stuff on a flight to Melbourne, because all of the boys had big tape recorders, you know, those reel-to-reel tape recorders. And I put that in the luggage on the plane, but I missed the plane because I went out and got drunk with a mate, and so I didn't miss my flight to Melbourne. So I think it took a couple of days for me to get down to Melbourne, but my stuff was all still there at the carousel. So yeah, that's my memory of coming into Sydney on the ship.
And did your family meet you at the airport in Melbourne when you finally...
No. I walked because I wasn't on the plane. I don't think they knew what plane I was on. I didn't tell them. I'm sure I didn't. So when I got to Melbourne, I just got in a taxi and went home and knocked on the front door.
How'd you pay for the taxi?
I had plenty of money.
You had money on you?
Oh, well, the army paid. You couldn't spend money in Vietnam, so they used to pay you every week, and it'd just accumulate, because over there, if cigarettes if you bought them, were like 10 cents a packet, because there was no duty on them or anything, and because everybody smoked. And if you're out in the bush, or if you were not in camp, you got them for free. So you had nothing to spend money on except bar girls if you went on leave, and that was 2 days the whole time I was there. So how could you?
What do you wish people better understood about servicemen of that generation?
I think they're like any serviceman. They're young. Anybody that goes into the Army or the Navy or the Air Force these days, they're all young people, aren't they? You know, you don't get old people going in. They have to be young for a number of reasons, and I think they all. It's an adventure, and it becomes something that they want to do for individual reasons. But I think we should look after them, particularly the young blokes that are coming back now that I see from Afghanistan and all those places. A lot of them need a lot of help. My experience when I got out of the army, and for all my mates that I speak to, is we just got rid of our uniform as quickly as we could and forgot about it. I can remember I went to my first army reunion in Perth, and that was around 1990. Now, I met some guys there that I hadn't seen, since the 70s, and I honestly had no recollection of Vietnam or what happened until I started to talk to them, and then things started to come flooding back. And I think that was the worst experience, because up until then I just put it to one side and didn't think about it at all. But then I had a few traumas and a few different things sort of worrying me, and with the help of various people, I sort of got through that, and then you just get on with things.
And do you recommend to people who are struggling, if they've come back from service, to go and seek that help early?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. They need to, and that's what the RSL's all about, is getting them support, because the suicide rate in Army personnel and veterans is incredibly high, and it's that's for a reason. They need help. They need a lot of support to get through it, I think, because it's very hard to send someone overseas and tell them to kill people, and then get them to come home and just get back into civilian life. Just think about it. It's a crazy situation. So the best situation is to have no wars at all.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so you returned home in 1972. You finally got back to Melbourne. That taxi's arrived at your mum's house. She would have been happy to see you.
I hope so.
And what about Lynette? How did you rekindle things there?
Well, you get R&R when you serve over in Vietnam. So after 6 months, you get 5 days R&R, and you can go anywhere you like. I think there were various destinations around the world that you could go for these 5 days. I chose to come home, and so I saw Lynette then. And then when I got home, yes, I would have rung her up, or she would have known I was coming home, and we started going out again, and eventually got married in 75.
What did life look like for you when you did get home? Did you start working again?
Well, people had to hold your job, so I could have gone back to Walton's, but I was a different person when I came home, so I didn't want to do that anymore. So I went back to school. I went to school at a private school in the city. It was run by I think Jesuits, or ex-Jesuit priest, and I can remember going back, and all the kids were 16, 17, and I was 22, so that was an experience. So I did that for 12 months. Then I got a job driving a meat truck while I was doing that to pay, so I could have some sort of a wage coming in. And I had jobs. Then I went to Perantec to do the real estate course after I finished the school, and I drove taxis while I was doing that. And then I started looking for a job in real estate, and I found that difficult too, because at that stage I was 23 or 24, and I went to get a job in rentals, and they were employing 18-year-olds and that sort of stuff. Anyway, I finally got a job in Fitzroy at a firm called J.J. Casey's. Doesn't exist anymore, and I worked there for a few years. Probably, well, I was married in 75. I probably got a job at Casey's and got married in the same year.
So you got married in 1975, and then you had 3 children pretty much straight after?
No, I got married in 75. We bought a house in 75, I think. And I bought a house in Fitzroy, cost me $19,000. Not bad. it was a little single-fronted Victorian terrace. It was 102 years old when I bought it. And I went to War Service because at that stage they give you War Service loans to help you buy a house. I think you could get $20,000 if you like. But they wouldn't give me the money because they said the house was too old. They wanted you to build a new house, out in the sticks. And
where were the sticks? Just before you move on.
Oh, that would have been Ringwood.
Is that?
Yeah, that was out in the Never Never Ringwood. Yeah, you wouldn't go that far on your holidays. This place was owned. There was an old man living in it. It was full of rubbish, paper. He had a table in the kitchen, and there was a little square that big where he ate his meals. The rest of it was junk, and so he left most of it there. I had to get a truck to take it all away, and then we pulled it apart and renovated it, and we lived there for 5 years. Our first child, David, was born in 1980, so that's 5 years after we were married, and that time was probably spent working and renovating the house. And Lynette worked at St Vincent's Hospital in Fitzroy, and I worked in Casey's in Smith Street, Fitzroy.
When did you move into sales in real estate?
The boss at Casey's, I was working in rentals, but because I knew a lot of people in Fitzroy, I'd sometimes list their property and so forth, so I was earning a bit of extra money. Because if you worked in rentals, you got a wage. If you worked in sales, you just got commission. So I'd occasionally get a few sales and get some extra money. And I remember I listed one property and the authority had run out, and the boss, and we sold it. But the boss said to me, the authority's run out, you didn't renew it, so I'm going to pay this guy the commission. So I told him to get stuffed, and I walked out. And I went looked in the paper, and in those days you could get jobs. It's not like today where I think young people find it hard to get jobs. So I went into McGee, O'Callaghan and Gill in the city and got a job in their commercial. I was running their commercial real estate, and that was good. But it was 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, no Saturdays. I didn't enjoy the cut and thrust. It was like a public service job, I think. It was, people came in to see you. You didn't get in the car and go and see them, and it was all offices and showrooms and retail outlets in the city. So I was bored, and the same guy rang me up that I was the client from Walton's and offered me a job, and I said no, Jack. I'd be going from a big commercial firm to a small little agency in Richmond called W.J. Jan. And I said, no, I'm not interested. Well, then he rang me back a few days later and offered me a partnership. So I said yes and went down there to work. But Jack was quite a wealthy guy, and he was more interested in buying real estate. That was a bit of a rude awakening, because I went down there one Saturday before I started work and the office was closed. And I thought, Jesus, what's this? A real estate agent closed on a Saturday. What have I done? And anyway, it worked out all right. But I had some funny experiences down there, because Jack would go to lunch and he wouldn't come back for 3 days. And I'd find out his wife would ring up and say, where's Jack's pay? And I'd say, well, where's Jack? And he'd be in Hong Kong or whatever, because he had a lot of other interests. But anyway, that was okay. I built the firm up and it was going okay. And we eventually bought Jack out for those reasons, because he wasn't interested in real estate. So myself and another guy bought him out. and then I moved to Fitzroy because a mate had got himself into trouble, and that was a firm called Alexander's. And he rang me up and said, look, would you consider, merging? And it was a much bigger firm than mine. So I did that, and I worked with him for a few years, and then he got himself into a bit of strife, and so I bought him out, but I was mortgaged up to here, and I sold 49% of the business to Peter Nelson. So here, Peter Nelson was a rival, Peter Nelson Real Estate in Fitzroy, and I was in Carlton at that stage. That worked for a few years, but then didn't work, and so we merged the two companies.
How did you balance because you had a young family, how did you balance real estate, that really busy work balance, and life?
I didn't. I think I was heading for a divorce or because real estate's a tough game, and I was working till all hours. I didn't see my kids, and so I just made a decision, and I sold. I got out, and I worked from home. And the funniest, it's funny how you remember little things. I went and did the kids up at Kinder. You could go to, the kids were still at Kinder. I don't know which one was there, but that was we'd moved to Elphington at that stage. And I went up and did fruit and milk at Kinder. They used that, you could go in and read the kids' stories, and they had, various things. And one of the women said to me something, have you been retrenched or whatever? And I said, no, I'm just getting to know my kids. So, that I can always remember that, because I thought, why is she asking me if why am I here? Because you just didn't do it.
So you've had 3 children. What are you most proud of about those kids?
They've all turned out pretty well. David, my eldest, went into real estate. I tried to talk him out of it as much as I could. I wouldn't give him a job, but he got his own job at a rival firm. He worked in Northcote, I think. He worked for a firm in Carlton that had an office in Northcote, and he started off in rentals, and he's still in real estate, and he took over my firm when I retired. So he's done well, and he's still working in real estate. So I'm quite proud of him. My oldest daughter, she's a physiotherapist. She doesn't work very much anymore, but she's got 3 kids, twin girls and a little boy. And my youngest daughter has just arrived back from England. She went over there on a working holiday, many years ago, and met a guy, which was my wife's worst nightmare. Met an Englishman just before she was due to come home, and then he followed her out here. They got married and lived over in England for a number of years, but this year they've just returned and bought a house down in Frankston. I'm proud of all 3 of them, and my wife, of course, because I think she's been the biggest influence on me. She says jump and I say how high, I think.
Does having kids change your perspective on life?
Oh, I think for everybody it does, yes. I don't think you can really experience that unless you've had kids. You worry about them, you love them, it's part of growing up, part of getting old, and then your grandkids come along and you love them even more.
Different relationship with the grandkids.
Oh, yeah, very different.
And so you've been part of the RSL community for more than 40 years, so starting in Ivanhoe, then Tramways. East Melbourne, and now Camberwell, where you're the secretary. What drew you into the RSL initially?
Well, I've been a member for 40 years, but I hardly had anything to do with the RSL for the majority of that time. I joined Ivanhoe RSL, but I'd go there for a drink occasionally, but hadn't really just a member and no part in the running of it or anything. And part of the process of coming to terms with being a veteran and so forth, I went up to the gym at the REPAT. I think my psychiatrist sent me up, said it'd be a good idea if you go up there. And I met a lot of guys at the gym, other veterans. And out of that, I got involved with the RSL. So I'd probably only been at the RSL seriously for probably 15 years. And we had a little terrace house in Fitzroy that was in amongst all the houses. It was the Fitzroy RSL, Fitzroy East Melbourne, or Tramways East Melbourne RSL. And they closed us down because we didn't have a liquor licence. And we couldn't get one because it was, just a little terrace house. We only met once a month. And, but once the Liquor Control Commission found out, or someone dobbed us in, I think, but they'd been operating since 1950 or 1955, and the Fitzroy Police used to attend there, and they'd have a drink, and sometimes they gave a talk. But once the Liquor Control Commission found out about it, they closed us down. So we had to sell it, and then we had to find a new home, and that's when we moved to Camberwell.
And so you've been secretary now for the last couple of years?
Yep.
Why was that role important for you to take on?
I wanted to do it because a lot of the veterans in the RSL are older than me. I'm one of the youngest because, they were all in Vietnam, prior to me being there. So I'm 75, nearly 76. They're 80 and 85. And as secretary, I can look after them. I can make sure that they're looked after if they need something, I think that's something that's good that I can do.
What role do clubs like the RSL play in supporting communities?
They do a lot. They're primarily to support veterans and their families and their kids, but they play a big part, I think, in the community, and particularly around Remembrance Day and Anzac Day. Today we're supporting guys from Afghanistan and Iraq and all that sort of stuff. So we do what we can.
And so somewhere along the line, golf enters your life. How old were you when you got into golf?
Around 40, I think. I was in the Fitzroy Tennis Club. I was president of the Fitzroy Tennis Club. I'm a life member of the Fitzroy Tennis Club. But my doctor, I had a bad back. My doctor said, you've got to stop playing tennis because it's too stop-start. It's because I was, every second week I'd be, have a problem with my back. So that's when I took up golf. I came down, didn't know many people. I struggled a bit for the first 12 months or whatever, and then I went away on one of their golf trips. It was called the Fresh Air Weekend, up to Tocumwal, and never looked back since then because I met all these guys, and then it felt more at home at the place, and that's how it all started.
How'd you go your first couple of rounds playing golf?
Can't remember, but I'd say pretty ordinary. I probably didn't play in the competition. I think it's a bit daunting. It's a hard game to learn, and my wife's tried a couple of times. She's found it very difficult. So you have to persist. But once you get through that period, I think it's a great game. Yeah, I enjoy it.
Yeah, absolutely. So you served on the Latrobe board for a couple of years here. What did that experience teach you about running the club behind the scenes?
Well, it teaches you when you go to the bar, you get hammered by people, members not happy about stuff. They want you to fix it. That's always painful. I think I respect the board for that because they come down here to enjoy themselves, but they generally get harassed a bit about what's wrong with the grass or what's wrong with the course or whatever. But it's just another experience of giving back. I think you realise the difficulties that are attached to it.
Have you travelled around the world or around Australia playing golf?
Yes, well, I love golf trips. So I've been able to Indonesia, to Vietnam, to lots of places, to America. I went to the Masters. That was an experience. Loved it. I went with a fellow member from here, and it was really his. He organised the thing because it was done through Mercedes-Benz, and so we stayed on the course, and it was very privileged. Yeah, it was a great experience. Yeah.
If you could only go back to one course and play, which one would you recommend?
I tell you where I wouldn't go. That's Barnbougle when it's windy. No, I'm not that good a golfer that courses stand out. I just enjoy the game. I've played a lot down in the peninsula, and they're all good.
What does golf give you now that it didn't give you earlier in life?
Well, the time to enjoy it. I mean, and that's one of the pros and cons of golf. I mean, you're young, but most of the people in this club would be, the average age would be 65, at least 70, something like that, might even be a bit more. But the golf is struggling to get young people involved because of the time it takes to play golf. And I think they're doing everything they can to speed things up and to make it easier for young people. But I enjoy it because that's every week, every day's a weekend for me. I don't have to worry about that. So I think if you're going to enjoy golf, just enjoy the fact that it takes forever. You know, my wife will constantly tell you that it's 6 hours. It's not 4 hours. It's 6 plus because, there's the 19th hole and all that sort of stuff. So, that's 3 days a week I play, Wednesdays, Fridays and Sundays. I struggle to play 2 days in a row. But, yeah, just the enjoyment of it is the best thing for me.
Is there a hole or a game that you remember playing that's been one of your most memorable?
No, I'm very competitive, so they're all memorable. I enjoy winning the money. I enjoy the competition, and I enjoy the team atmosphere of a 4-ball.
So you've never had a hole-in-one, Peter. Is
No.
it coming?
Oh, God, I've come close on the first. I was about that far away. But who knows? You live in hope, Gemma, you live in hope. But I don't care. I don't think I will have missed out. One of the guys I play with has had 9 or 10 of them. But then again, he plays. He goes around the course, even practicing. I don't do that. So I suppose it depends how much you play, and also how far you can hit the ball. Because there's some greens here on the 13th, I can't get to the green. So if you can't get there, you can't get it in the hole, can you?
That's right. That's right. When you look back on your military service and your business and your family and your community roles, like at the RSL, what are you most proud of?
I'm probably most proud of my family. I have to say that that's probably more attributed to my wife than it is to me.
And finally, my last question, Peter. What brings you the most joy in life?
Hitting a good drive.
Okay, that's a good answer.
It's amazing when you see it sailing up, and then you think, well, I've got this now. It's easy, and then you can't do it again.
No, you get to your second shot.
And you muck it up.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Peter. I really appreciate you taking the time to tell me your story.
Thank you.